Today I will read for you a letter I have written based on the events surrounding the fall of Richmond, Virginia during the Civil War. It is based on the research I did of April 2nd, 1865, and the horror that followed. In this letter, a man fighting on the side of the South is writing to his brother who had fought for the North. The following is a record of that fictitious letter. Dear brother, as the night falls, I write to you in despair. Our morals are defeated and our spirits shattered. I admit this, of course, with some bitterness, as I know our fall brings great joy to Washington. I was fighting with all my resolve not to address this letter to you, for my selfish nature would not permit myself to lend you any kind of satisfaction. Yet my kinder instinct prevailed, and although I know we have not exchanged thoughts for many years, for good reason, I cannot think of another more worthy of the account I feel convinced to give. There was a time when I thought all efforts on your side were futile, when even the horror of battle brought with it a confidence of victory. Yet now I can scarcely remember if that time even existed. Once my hopes were brightly burning, filled with all the vigor of a foolhardy lad certain his strength and good nature would win the maiden. Now, just as the boy, that flame has been doused with reality. I shall begin my report from Sunday morning, for otherwise I would have too much to write and too little time or space to accomplish it. This one thing I am certain you know, and if not now, then certainly you shall before this letter arrives. Richmond has fallen. The first bluejacket was spotted this morning around 7 o'clock, yet in my opinion she was given up long before that. Yesterday I was charged early in the morning to go into town and perceive the morale of the people, for some feared the populace had sensed something amiss. I thought it was good of them to sense something amiss, for indeed that was true. But still I went, and before passing even 2 houses I spotted a copy of the Sentinel lying on the ground, its headlines promising a large advantage on the part of our troops. With that sort of encouragement, no wonder I beheld the usual crowd of families riding to church. They were dressed in their Sunday best, making casual conversation with one another as if nothing of war had ever reached their ears. Yet I could tell that behind their painted faces was a tension ready to break. These were no fools. They knew what was coming. I could read it as plainly as I read the day's paper. Gossip flows all too easily among humans, and if I knew anything about church folk, then these were no exception. Figuring my duties complete, I turned back towards camp, but as I came upon St. Paul's, I noticed a commotion had rendered the church in a state of chaos. People were streaming out in a panic, though from what I couldn't discern. Only once I got closer did the reason become easier to distinguish. One lady was talking to another, saying, "Only a dire threat could persuade him to leave church." Another replied, "And in the middle of service, too." Muddled, "We must warn them," and "Did you see the letter?" were also heard among the shouts of voices, and somehow through it all I pieced together the events that had just occurred. Apparently Davis had received a message from General Lee, though of what I can't be exactly certain. Whatever was said, its contents were of such importance that it forced the President to get up and leave in the middle of service. I could only assume this news was not good. This is what had put the citizens into such a panic, and I can certainly attest to the fact that a good panic is extraordinarily contagious. News of this incident spread like wildfire, and soon the streets were filled with signs of evacuation. Wagons were being loaded up, children were screaming, and there was smoke coming from the Capitol building, though I later found out this was a large pile of unsigned money being burned on the lawn. I immediately ran back to camp, finding it in no better state than the city. Officers were shouting orders to various militias, some to go burn supplies, others to head to the trains in order to be transported to another location along with the President and various cabinets. Both the 1st and 19th First-Class Militia were given orders to remain behind and protect the city. As I was a member of the 19th, this was to be my obligation for the next several hours. When the night had fallen, we received word that the troops had begun to evacuate the trenches. This dashed our hopes once and for all, and I can assure you there was not one of us eager to be left alone to defend the city. I remember the rest of the night as though in a dream. The chaos was so great that it took all our resolve not to run and flee in terror. The citizens had turned into a mob, setting warehouses and liquor on fire. Though this had started out as a government order, it quickly turned into a state of affairs as out of control as the fire that was now ravaging the city. The ships, too, were on fire. I could see the whole James River fleet burning with such fury that when it reached the Virginia she exploded with such force I thought for sure July had come early. Some of the men began to lose their wits and dispersed into the crowd, joining them in their mad delight. What was left of us resolved to hold our ground until the next orders came. It was just before dawn when General Earlwell commanded his men to take control of Mayo's Bridge at the foot of 14th Street. They were to protect it until the last soldier made it safely across. I was still at my post, wide awake and fully in my right mind, when I saw them rushing the bridge, only to be stopped by the arsenal, which right then exploded with such force that the whole city shook and a plume of black smoke arose to greet the morning. I fell to my feet, unaware of whether I was dead or alive, yet fully grasping the fact that our last store of gunpowder had quite literally gone up in smoke. Soon after this calamity, the remains of the army came marching through, and I went away with them. We crossed the bridge and promptly destroyed it. I turned back as we marched away, glancing with many others the faint outline of a blue jacket coming over the hill. In my mind I imagined the look on his face, tinted with shock as he beheld the once grand capital of the South, twisting and writhing in flames of destruction. I suppose there was some respite in knowing there was nothing left for them to capture. As I watched the city flood with a sea of blue, and even as I heard the cries of the few who would stay behind, I felt as though a man walking dead. There are no men void of hope that still breathe, just as there are no things damp when caught up in flame. There is no life for me here. Even from where we camped, the yellow glow of the city can be seen in all its glory. I suppose the soldiers are trying to put it out even now. Or perhaps they will let it burn. No matter, everything we fought for is lost. The many lives given were all for naught, but no more on that. I humbly congratulate you on your hard-fought victory. Though I know you were wounded beyond fighting condition, I would be pleased to hear a report of your battles and of the present state Mother and Emma are in. You know I can never go home, nor can I write them a letter. If it pleases you, you may report on my condition, as well as give them my love. It is no matter whether they receive it or not, just tell them I am well, and I pray that someday I may do so in person. Yours, William Bennett. Thank you for listening to my Civil War letter. I hope this has sparked your interest in the Civil War, and perhaps you might have even learned something new along the way.